Hi, welcome back. I'm Rena, and let's go over everything that I read this March. I only physically read one book and I didn't even finish it, so I don't have anything to show you, but I'll put the images here of everything that I'm talking about. The first book that I read this month is called The Heist of the Hidden Heart by L.L. Gray. This is the fifth book in a KU series called the Havenwood Cozy Mystery Series. I really loved it, but personally, I'm a very character-driven reader, and so I got kind of attached to these characters within like the first few books, and at this point, I think I'm gonna love everything else that she writes just because I'm so emotionally invested in all of these characters and their stories. That being said, I do think it was a really good, unique installment. The series takes place in a town called Havenwood, which is basically an escape for everyone who has magic to kind of hide away from the rest of the real world that would like investigate them or not believe them and just doesn't know that magic is real. Our FMC Harper has some minor magic and she moves back into this town, and after she moves in, there's a bunch of different mysteries that kind of pop up. They're all so unique and so different and so unexpected. For me personally, guessing what the next mystery is going to be is very hard, so I'm always pleasantly surprised when I get to revisit this world and see what the next mystery is. This book was no exception. I really liked it. I gave it a 4.75 star. The next book that I read is called Ravenous by Alana Rachel Parker. This book is a chonker. It is so long. I absolutely think that this book is a big reason of why I only read 4 books in March, because that's about half of what I've been reading usually. This book is a fantasy with some romance, and even though looking at the trope list might make you feel like the romance is very heavy, I would call it more of a fantasy just because the world building and the complexities that go into it are so intense. I did really enjoy the world that this takes place in and all of the world building that went into it. It's a magic system that I've never seen before, taking place in a world that I also thought was very, very unique. That being said, I personally was very confused throughout. It has some great tropes: enemies to lovers, fake marriage, hunter, prey, found family, all tropes that I would absolutely love and I did really love. The only thing that held this book back for me is I was so confused the entire time that I was reading. If you've read this, I would love to know and I would love to talk to someone about it because I was really, really confused. For me, a 3-star rating is still good. I still enjoyed it, but the main reason I docked stars was because I was so confused that sometimes it made me not really want to pick up this book, and so for that reason I felt like I wasn't super enjoying the read. That being said, I would still recommend it to others, especially if you really like fantasy with complex world building, and I would still also look out for whatever the author writes next. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Enemy of My Dreams by Jenny Williamson. This was a historical fiction romance, which is not a genre that I've read a lot of. I think this might actually be my first, so that was pretty cool, and I did really, really enjoy this story. When I went to write my review of this book, I did read through what some other people had written, and apparently if you are really, really into history, there are some inaccuracies in this that might bother you. Personally, I am not that into history, and also I'm very good at suspending my disbelief, and I did not mind. I think the litmus test is, are you bothered by the idea of the Roman Empire having a princess? If that bothers you, maybe this book isn't for you because she is our FMC. If you're like, what's wrong with that? That sounds fine. Then carry on and read, and I think that you'll enjoy it because that was also me. I gave this book a 4.5-star rating. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really liked the characters. I really liked the tropes. It does enemies to lovers really well. They genuinely start as enemies. Our FMC's father has just passed away, and so her brother is taking over the throne. He's trying to force her into an arranged marriage that she wants no part of. So she goes and gets herself kidnapped by the enemy to escape, and then of course she ends up catching feelings for said enemy. I thought this was a really fun read. You've got enemies to lovers, you've got princess and barbarian, you've got found family, and a found family that I thought was done really, really well, where she's basically convincing his friend group to like her, even though they're all enemies at the start. The MMC has some very pretty, very quotable lines about just being absolutely obsessed with her, willing to burn the world for her. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but the MMC is also a little bit unhinged. The only things that I didn't really like about this book is that the POV felt a little bit confusing. I'm not sure if this is just because I was listening to the audiobook, so maybe there were like some breaks that I was kind of missing out on and not being able to see when we switched perspectives. And then I also thought the ending was kind of rushed. I personally thought there were some things that I would have loved to see the characters take more time to resolve. But by that point, of course, I was already so invested and I really enjoyed the story, so that didn't take away too much for me. I still give this a 4.5 out of 5. The last book that I read in the month of March is Night Lore by Genesis Batista. I actually just finished this on March 31st, so I'm very excited that I got to squeeze it into this wrap-up. Night Lore is a fairy fantasy. I'm not even gonna say that it's a romance because I think the slow burn is burning so slowly that if you go into this looking for romance, you're gonna be disappointed. Something that I thought was very cool about this book is the way that it addresses the different timelines between lifespans of fairies and humans. I've thought about this when I read other fairy books, like, oh, fae live to be hundreds of thousands of years, but everything kind of of feels on the same time scale as I would expect and read in a human fantasy book. So it was really interesting to see this book kind of take that concept head on and acknowledge like, yeah, the Fae live to be thousands, hundreds of years old, so everything's gonna happen on kind of like this much grander scale. So you get an event and then you have many, many years pass, 11 years later, 30 years later, whatever it is. So that was really cool and really interesting. And it's also kind of funny because we're humans, and as a human reading this, how can she be stuck in that situation for that many years? Oh, that's right, she's Fae. It probably doesn't even feel that long. Maybe that to her feels like what months would feel like to us. So that was kind of cool. That being said, I think something about doing the narrative this way, where it's almost like you're a step back and kind of seeing the grander scale of things, made me have a harder time getting attached to the characters. That's a really nice way of phrasing it. More realistically, I didn't care about anyone in this book. If I can't get attached to your characters, I'm not really liking the story that much. So for me, I'm gonna give this a 3.5 stars. It was really interesting. It covered a lot of dark topics, so it was kind of weird to see these dark things happen, and I just didn't really care. If this was written differently, I would have been emotionally distraught and like wrecked over the things that happened. But because it's written from such a kind of bird's eye view perspective, I didn't really feel that affected. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm like totally heartless, but for me, this is gonna be 3.5 stars. Those are the 4 books that I read in the month of March. I did read like 90% of Lights Out as well, but because I didn't quite finish it, we're gonna put that one into April. Let me know down below, how did your month of March go? Thanks for watching and happy reading.